The massive chamber on Nexus Prime hummed with nervous energy. 12 different alien species filled the curved seats that rose up like stadium bleachers. Their various sounds of breathing, chittering, and humming created a strange symphony that echoed off the crystal walls. Ambassador Tae-ho Kim sat perfectly still at the human table. His black suit was pressed and neat, his hands folded calmly on the polished surface. To his left, Admiral Bo-Ram Lee wore her dress uniform with all the ribbons and medals that showed her 30 years of service. To his right, Chief Negotiator Woo Jin Park sorted through digital files on his tablet, his face showing nothing. The three humans looked tiny compared to the massive chamber around them. Above them, floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy. The bird-like Rixians flapped their colorful wings and squawked to each other. The rock-like granite lords sat silent and heavy, their stone faces impossible to read. The jellyfish-like celestials floated in their water tanks, their tentacles moving in slow patterns. But all eyes were on the center platform where Council Prime Veltar stood. The tall, thin alien had skin like blue metal and eyes that glowed white. His people, the Zenthari, had run the Galactic Council for over 2,000 years. They were used to getting their way. "We have been very patient with humanity," Veltar said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "For 30 years we have welcomed you into galactic society. We have shared our knowledge and our technology. We have opened our markets to your goods." Tae-ho kept his face blank, but inside he felt his anger growing. The Zenthari made it sound like they had done humans a favor. They never mentioned how much human technology had helped everyone else. They never talked about how human traders had fixed broken trade routes or how human scientists had solved problems that had stumped alien minds for centuries. But humanity has proven to be difficult, Veltar continued. "Your species is too aggressive, too independent, too unwilling to follow proper procedures. This cannot continue." Around the chamber, other aliens nodded or made sounds of agreement. The Mold Collective's spokesperson, a writhing mass of green fungus, pulsed brighter. The insect-like hive queens clicked their mandibles together in a rhythm that meant, "Yes, yes, yes." Veltar raised one long, thin arm. In his hand was a crystal tablet that glowed with official documents. "Therefore, the Galactic Council has created the Sapient Species Regulation Protocols. These new rules will help humanity become better citizens of our galaxy." The crystal tablet projected the documents into the air above the chamber. Tae-ho read them quickly, his face getting harder with each line. The protocols were not suggestions. They were demands. First, no human colony could have more than 50,000 people without council permission. Second, all human children must attend council-approved schools where they would learn proper social behavior. Third, all human military forces must be reduced by 70%. Fourth, human scientists could only work on projects approved by council experts, but the worst was saved for last. Fifth, all humans would need to undergo genetic modification to reduce their aggressive tendencies and make them more suitable for peaceful galactic society. Admiral Bo-Ram Lee's hand moved slightly toward her sidearm before she caught herself. Woo Jin Park's stylus snapped in half in his grip. Tae-ho just kept reading, his face like carved stone. "These protocols are not optional," Veltar announced. "Every species that joins the galactic community must follow council rules." The Vorthons accepted similar changes to their warrior culture. The Flame Dancers agreed to control their expansion. Now it is humanity's turn. The chamber erupted in approving sounds. The Rixians squawked loudly. The Granite Lords rumbled deep in their chests. The Mold Collective pulsed in excited colors. They had done this before, forcing younger species to change everything about themselves to fit council ideas of civilized behavior. However, Veltar continued, his glowing eyes fixed on the human delegation, "We understand this is a big change. Therefore, the council is prepared to help humanity accept these new rules." "Help." Tae-ho almost laughed at the word. He knew what kind of help the council meant. "Effective immediately, all human trade permits are suspended," Veltar announced. "All human vessels are banned from using council hyperspace routes. All joint scientific projects are ended. All cultural exchange programs are canceled. All loans and financial agreements are frozen." The message was clear. "Do what we say or we will cut you off from everything." "Furthermore," Veltar said, his voice getting colder, No council species may conduct independent trade with humanity. No council species may share technology with humanity. No council species may allow humans to visit their worlds or use their facilities. Around the chamber, a few aliens looked uncomfortable. The Vorthons, who had become good friends with humans over the years, shifted nervously in their seats. Some of the younger Rixians stopped their cheerful squawking, but none of them spoke up. Humanity has 72 standard hours to sign these protocols, Veltar finished. If you refuse, you will be completely cut off from galactic civilization. No trade, no travel, no contact with any council species. You will be trapped in your single star system forever, alone and forgotten. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Every alien eye was on the human delegation. Some looked excited to see humanity finally brought to heel. Others looked curious about how the humans would react. A few looked almost sorry. Tejo stood up slowly. His chair made a small sound as it pushed back. In the huge chamber, surrounded by hundreds of aliens, he looked small and fragile. Just one human against the entire galaxy. The human delegation requests time to consider this proposal, he said calmly. Veltar's glowing eyes showed satisfaction. Of course. 72 hours. The council will await your answer. Thank you, Tejo said politely. He turned to his companions. Admiral Lee, Chief Negotiator Park, we're leaving. The three humans stood and walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet of the chamber. No one spoke as they made their way down the long corridor that led to the docking bay where their ship waited. Behind them, the chamber erupted into excited conversation. Alien voices rose and fell as they discussed humanity's certain surrender. The Xanthari had never failed to break a species that opposed them. Humans would be no different. As the door closed behind the human delegation, Veltar allowed himself a small smile. In 72 hours, humanity would sign the protocols. They would accept genetic modification. They would give up their independence. They would become just another obedient member of the council. He had no idea how wrong he was. 2 days later, the council chamber was packed tighter than anyone could remember. Word had spread across the galaxy that humanity would finally surrender to council authority. Media drones from dozens of species buzzed around the upper levels, their cameras ready to record this historic moment. The Rixian news teams had arrived early, chattering excitedly about getting the best angles. The Granite Lord observers sat like mountains in their reserved section, their stone faces impossible to read, but their presence showing how important this moment was. Even the mysterious shadow folk had sent a representative, though nobody could see them clearly. Council Prime Veltar stood at his platform, wearing ceremonial robes that sparkled with embedded crystals. This was going to be his greatest triumph. Another young species brought into line. Another example of council wisdom and power. Today marks a new beginning, Veltar announced to the packed chamber. Today, humanity joins the community of civilized species by accepting the wisdom of council guidance. Approving sounds filled the chamber. The insect-like hive queens clicked their approval. The flame dancers flickered brighter. The mold collective pulsed in happy colors. The great doors at the back of the chamber opened with a deep rumble. Ambassador Tejo Kim walked in first, followed by Admiral Boram Lee and Chief Negotiator Woo Jin Park. They moved in perfect formation, their steps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. But something was different. The humans weren't carrying the usual diplomatic bags full of documents and gifts. They weren't accompanied by the team of assistants and translators who usually helped with important meetings. Each human carried only a single datapad. They walked to their table and stood behind their chairs without sitting down. Tejo looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various alien representatives. His face was calm and serious. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Tejo began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. We have carefully considered your generous offer. Veltar leaned forward slightly. This was it. The moment of human surrender. Around the chamber, media drones moved closer to get better recordings. After much discussion with our government and our people, Tejo continued, we have reached a decision. The chamber held its breath. Even the constantly moving celestials in their water tanks had gone still. Our answer is no. For a moment, nobody moved. The words seemed to hang in the air like something physical. Then the chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens leaped to their feet, shouting in dozens of different languages. The Rixians' squawking became a deafening roar. The Granite Lord's rumbling shook the floor. The Hive Queen's clicking sounded like machine gun fire. Tejo waited for the noise to die down before continuing. Furthermore, as of this moment, humanity formally withdraws from all council treaties, agreements, and protocols. The shouting got louder. Some aliens were pointing at the humans with claws, tentacles, and appendages that had no names. Others were frantically talking into communication devices, spreading the news across the galaxy. Admiral Boram Lee stepped forward. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her medals gleaming under the chamber's lights. All human military forces are immediately withdrawn from council operations. All joint bases will be evacuated within 7 days. All shared facilities will be returned to council control. The military implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. Human ships patrolled dozens of dangerous sectors. Human soldiers guarded council installations in hostile areas. Human engineers maintained critical systems across the galaxy. Chief Negotiator Woojin Park raised his voice over the chaos. All human commercial vessels are ordered to cease operations with council species immediately. All trade agreements are terminated. All shipping contracts are canceled. Now the economic reality began to sink in. Human traders carried goods between species that couldn't stand each other. Human banks financed major projects across the galaxy. Human insurance companies protected investments worth trillions of credits. But Tejo wasn't finished. Any council vessels currently in human space have 72 hours to depart. After that time, they will be considered unauthorized intruders and dealt with according to human law. Veltar finally found his voice. You cannot do this. No species has ever rejected council authority. Tejo looked directly at the council prime. We just did. This is impossible. Veltar's glow was flickering with anger. You are one species. We are 12 major civilizations and hundreds of minor ones. You cannot survive alone. We'll find out, Admiral Lee said calmly. The council will not permit this. A hive queen rose from her seat, her wings buzzing angrily. We will enforce our authority. Woojin Park smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. With what? Council forces are 70% human equipment and 40% human personnel. Your enforcement fleet is commanded by Admiral Chen aboard the human ship Determination. The chamber fell silent as aliens realized the truth. They had become dependent on human military power to enforce their will. Without humans, the council had very little actual force. This is economic suicide, screeched a Rixian representative. Human trade makes up 1/4 of all galactic commerce. True, Tejo agreed. It will be interesting to see how everyone adjusts. A granite lord spoke, his voice like grinding stone. Your scientists work on our most important projects. Your engineers maintain our most critical systems. Without council cooperation, you will fall behind. Perhaps, Tejo said, or perhaps we'll move ahead faster without committees and approval boards slowing us down. Veltar was practically glowing with rage now. You are making a terrible mistake. The galaxy is dangerous. There are hostile species beyond council space. Pirates and raiders and worse things. Without council protection, humanity will be destroyed. For the first time, Tejo's calm expression changed. He smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Council Prime humanity fought its way to the stars while most of your species were still afraid to leave their home systems. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that would have wiped out civilizations. We built an interstellar civilization from nothing but determination and ingenuity. His voice got harder. We don't need your protection. We never did. The 3 humans turned toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the stunned silence of the chamber. Wait, Veltar called. You cannot just leave. There are procedures. Protocols. You must file proper documents. Tejo stopped and looked back. File them yourself. The great doors closed behind the human delegation with a final echoing boom. For a moment, the chamber was completely silent. Then everyone started talking at once. Veltar stood on his platform, staring at the closed doors. For 2,000 years, no species had ever said no to the council. For 2,000 years, economic pressure had been enough to force compliance. But humans weren't like other species. They had just proven that sometimes the best way to win a negotiation was to walk away and build something better. The council was about to learn just how much they needed humanity. And they were about to discover that humans, when pushed too far, pushed back harder than anyone expected. 1 week after the humans walked out, Council Prime Veltar sat in his private office staring at reports that made no sense. The humans should have been begging to come back by now. Their economy should have collapsed. Their people should have been panicking. Instead, every report showed the same impossible thing. Humanity was doing fine. Dr. Soo-Jin Yoon, the council's chief economist and one of the few humans still working for them, stood nervously in front of Veltar's desk. Her hand shook slightly as she held her data pad. She had requested this emergency meeting and now she was starting to wish she hadn't. The numbers are concerning, she began carefully. Veltar's glowing eyes fixed on her. Explain. Soo-Jin touched her data pad and holographic charts appeared in the air above them. Human withdrawal has affected galactic commerce more than we predicted. Much more. The first chart showed shipping routes across the galaxy. Red lines marked paths that were now closed or disrupted. Humans controlled 23% of all galactic shipping, Soo-Jin explained. But it's worse than that. They operated the most difficult and dangerous routes, the ones other species couldn't or wouldn't handle. Veltar studied the chart. The red lines cut through some of the most important trade corridors in the galaxy. Other species can take over those routes. That's what we thought, Soo-Jin said, bringing up another chart. But human ships were specially designed for those dangerous areas. They have better shields, faster engines, and more advanced navigation systems. Other species' ships can't handle the same risks. The second chart showed mining operations. Again, red markers showed human involvement. 31% of galactic mining operations were human-run. They worked in asteroid fields and dangerous systems that other species avoided. They had equipment and techniques that let them work safely in places that would kill anyone else. Veltar was starting to look worried, but he tried to hide it. We managed without humans for thousands of years before they joined us. Soo-Jin's next chart made his glow flicker with concern. It showed technology patents and innovations over the past 30 years. This is the real problem, she said quietly. 67% of all new technology in the last 30 years had human involvement. Not just participation, human ideas, human designs, human innovations. The chart showed a long list that made Veltar's stomach sink. Faster than light communication arrays, human improved. Quantum power cores, human designed. Adaptive shield systems, human invented. Medical nanobots, human created. Agricultural enhancement systems, human developed. But surely we can continue using these technologies, Veltar said, though his voice was getting weaker. Soo-Jin pulled up another document and Veltar's glow dimmed completely. It was an official legal notice from the Human Patent Office. They're enforcing their intellectual property rights, Soo-Jin explained. Every piece of technology that humans helped create, every process they improved, every system they designed, they're demanding that we stop using them immediately. Veltar read the document with growing horror. The humans weren't just taking their knowledge with them. They were taking away knowledge that the rest of the galaxy had come to depend on. This is impossible, he said weakly. These technologies are integrated into everything we do. Our ships, our cities, our life support systems. We can't just stop using them. The legal notice gives us 30 days, Soo-Jin said. After that, they'll take enforcement action. Before Veltar could ask what enforcement action meant, his communication system chimed with an emergency signal. Commander Jae-sung, O of the Galactic Trade Commission appeared as a hologram, his face pale with worry. Council Prime, he said urgently. We have a crisis. The Vorthon system has just announced they're withdrawing from Council authority. Veltar stood up so quickly his chair fell over. What? Why? They received an offer from humanity, Jae-sung explained. Direct trade agreement, access to human technology and markets, protection from pirates. They've accepted. The room seemed to spin around Veltar. If other species started making independent deals with humanity, the entire council system would collapse. That's not all, Jae-sung continued. The Rixians are considering a similar deal. So are the Celestials, and the Hydrogel Collective just recalled their ambassador from Nexus Prime. Veltar sat down heavily. Around the galaxy, species were choosing humanity over the council, the same species who had cheered when the humans were given their ultimatum. Soo-Jin cleared her throat nervously. There's something else. Minister Kyung-hee Choi from the Human Patent Office sent a personal message. A new hologram appeared, a middle-aged human woman with graying hair and kind eyes. But her smile was sharp as a blade. Greetings, Council Prime Veltar. The recording began politely. I wanted to personally ensure you understood our position on intellectual property rights. We take them very seriously. Her expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in her eyes. You see, when humans joined the galactic community 30 years ago, we were told we must respect existing patents and copyrights. We've been very good about following those rules. She paused, letting that sink in. Now we're simply asking for the same respect in return. Every technology that bears human innovation must be licensed through proper channels. Every process that uses human improvements must pay appropriate fees. Every system that incorporates human designs must receive official approval. The recording leaned forward slightly. Of course, we understand this may cause some inconvenience, but I'm sure you appreciate the importance of respecting intellectual property rights. After all, the council insisted we learn this lesson. Her smile got wider and less friendly. Have a wonderful day. The hologram vanished, leaving the office in silence. Veltar looked at the reports scattered across his desk. Economic collapse, technology dependence, military weakness, political defection. In 1 week, humanity had shown the galaxy just how much they had been taken for granted. How long? He asked quietly. Sir? Sujin wasn't sure what he meant. How long before the council collapses completely? Sujin consulted her datapad. If current trends continue, we have maybe 3 months before half our member species withdraw. 6 months before complete economic collapse. The technology shutdown alone will cripple most of our systems within weeks. Veltar stared out his office window at the city below. Nexus Prime had been the center of galactic civilization for thousands of years. Now it felt like he was watching it die. Humans had done something no other species had ever managed. They had made themselves absolutely necessary while appearing completely harmless. They had become so integrated into galactic civilization that removing them was like removing the foundation from under a building, and they had done it all with patience, hard work, and quiet competence. While other species made speeches and demanded respect, humans had simply made themselves indispensable. Now they were gone, and the galaxy was discovering what it meant to lose the people who actually kept everything running. Veltar reached for his communication device. It was time to make some very difficult calls. 3 months after humanity walked away, the galaxy was falling apart. Fleet Admiral Dongwu Lim stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Soul's Pride, reading reports that should have been impossible. 6 council species were fighting civil wars. 3 more had completely withdrawn from council authority. The galactic economy had shrunk by 60%, and it was getting worse every day. Admiral, called Captain Jinwoo Nam from the communication station. We're receiving another request for asylum. The Flame Dancer colony ship Bright Hope is asking for permission to enter human space. Dongwu nodded. It was the 5th refugee ship this week. Species across the galaxy were discovering that their governments couldn't provide basic services without human technology and expertise. Food distribution systems were failing. Medical facilities were shutting down. Even simple things like waste recycling plants were breaking down. Grant them permission, Dongwu said. Direct them to the refugee processing station at Kepler. Through his office window, Dongwu could see dozens of alien ships waiting in organized formations. Not warships. Cargo vessels, colony ships, even luxury liners converted to carry refugees. All flying toward human space, all hoping for sanctuary from the chaos spreading across the galaxy. His personal communicator chimed. Ambassador Mi-young Seo appeared as a small hologram calling from Luna Station. Admiral, I have news, she said, smiling broadly. The Rixian delegation has agreed to our terms. Full alliance, complete technology sharing, unrestricted trade access. Dongwu wasn't surprised. The Rixians had been among the first to realize their mistake. Their entire economy depended on carrying messages and small packages between species that couldn't stand each other. Without human-designed communication networks and navigation systems, they couldn't do their job. What about the others? Dongwu asked. The Vorthon signed yesterday. The Celestials are meeting with their parliament tomorrow, but their ambassador says it's just a formality. The Hydrogel Collective wants to send a full diplomatic mission. Each species that joined humanity's growing alliance made the council weaker. More importantly, it made humanity stronger. Every new ally brought resources, knowledge, and capabilities that humans could use. Any word from the council? Dongwu asked. Mi-young's smile got sharper. 3 unofficial contact attempts this week. They're not calling it surrender yet, but they're definitely interested in renewed dialogue. Before Dongwu could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Captain Nam's voice echoed from the bridge communications. Admiral to the bridge immediately. We have a situation. Dongwu hurried to the main bridge where the massive viewing screen showed a sight that made him frown. 50 Council warships were moving through space toward the human border. At their head was the Zenthari flagship Eternal Glory, one of the largest vessels in the known galaxy. They're demanding passage through human space, reported Commander Haywan Park from the navigation station. They claim it's their right under the old treaties. The treaties they broke when they gave us that ultimatum? Dongwu asked dryly. The same ones, Haywan confirmed. The Council fleet was impressive, cruisers and battleships from multiple species, enough firepower to level a planet. But Dongwu wasn't worried. He had something they didn't expect. Signal the destroyer Soul's Fury, he ordered. Tell Captain Young-ho that he has permission to make contact. On the viewing screen, a single human destroyer moved toward the Council fleet. It looked tiny compared to the massive alien warships, like a minnow approaching a school of whales. The lead Council ship, a Zenthari heavy cruiser, transmitted a message. Human vessel, you will stand aside. We have important business beyond your space. Captain Young-ho's response was polite but firm. Council vessels, you are in violation of human space boundaries. Please reverse course and depart immediately. You dare threaten us? The Zenthari captain's voice crackled with anger. We are 50 ships. You are one. Sir, Young-ho replied calmly, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm asking politely. This is your only warning. Dongwu watched as the Council fleet continued forward, ignoring the lone human destroyer. The aliens had no idea what they were about to face. 30 years of cooperation had given humanity detailed knowledge of every Council ship design, every weapon system, every defensive capability. More importantly, humans had spent those 30 years quietly improving their own technology, while sharing just enough to seem cooperative. The destroyer Soul's Fury was only 3 years old, built with all the innovations that humans had developed in secret. Its shields didn't just block energy. They absorbed it and fed it back to the ship's power systems. Its weapons didn't just fire in straight lines. They could bend around obstacles and change targets in mid-flight. Most importantly, its targeting computers could predict enemy movements by analyzing thousands of variables in real time. Against aliens who thought in predictable patterns, it was like fighting the future. Council fleet, final warning. Captain Young-ho transmitted. Depart human space immediately. The Zenthari captain's response was to open fire with every weapon on his ship. What happened next took exactly 17 minutes and 12 seconds. Dongwu timed it. The destroyer's shields absorbed the incoming energy and used it to power defensive systems that adapted in real time. Weapons that worked perfectly against human shields 5 years ago couldn't even scratch the new technology. Meanwhile, the destroyer's return fire was surgical in its precision. Instead of trying to destroy the Council ships, it systematically disabled them. Engines went offline. Weapon systems shut down. Life support remained intact, but nothing else worked. The entire Council fleet was rendered helpless without a single casualty. This is Captain Young-ho of the year. Destroyer Soul's Fury, the transmission, went out to all 50 disabled ships. Your vessels are now adrift. Emergency life support will function normally. Please signal for assistance from your own forces and remove yourselves from human space as soon as possible. The politeness somehow made it worse. 50 warships defeated by one destroyer, and the human captain was still saying please. Dongwu smiled as he watched Council rescue ships arrive to tow away their disabled fleet. Word of this encounter would spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species would understand that humans weren't just economically and technologically superior. They were militarily unstoppable. His communicator chimed again. This time it was Director General Yeon-ho Song calling from Earth. Admiral, I've been watching the news feeds, Yeon-ho said. 6 more Council species have requested emergency meetings with our diplomats. The Granite Lords want to discuss mutual defense agreements. Even some Zenthari colonies are asking about joining our alliance. Dongwu nodded. The cascade was accelerating. Every day brought more refugees, more alliance requests, more proof that the old Council system was finished. What about the Council leadership? He asked. Veltar sent another unofficial message. He's dropped all mention of the regulation protocols. Now he just wants to restore friendly relations between our peoples. And our response? Yeon-ho's expression was diplomatic but final. We told him that individual species are welcome to apply for alliance membership through proper channels. But we no longer recognize the Council's authority to speak for anyone but themselves. The irony was perfect. The Council had tried to force humanity to follow their rules and accept their authority. Now they were learning that authority without power was just empty words. Through the bridge windows, Dongwu watched more refugee ships arriving. Each one carried people who had chosen humanity's vision of voluntary cooperation over the Council's system of forced compliance. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was showing everyone what it looked like when a species earned respect instead of demanding it. 6 months after humanity's departure, the Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime looked like a tomb, where hundreds of representatives once filled the curved seating. Now only 23 aliens remained. Their voices echoed strangely in the vast empty space. Council Prime Veltar stood at his platform, but his ceremonial robes hung loose on his thin frame. He had lost weight, and his blue metal skin had lost its shine. The glowing crystals in his robes seemed dim and lifeless. "We must face reality," he said to the sparse gathering. "Half our former members have joined the Human Alliance. Another quarter have simply stopped responding to our communications. Of the major species, only we Zenthari and a few others remain." Around the chamber, the surviving representatives looked defeated. The Mold Collective's spokesperson had shrunk to half its former size. The remaining hive queens sat with their wings folded, no longer making their cheerful clicking sounds. Even the massive granite lord seemed smaller, their stone faces cracked with stress lines. "The economic reports are worse every week," continued the Rixian economist who had replaced Su Jin Yoon after she defected to humanity. "Galactic trade is down 70%. Most shipping routes have collapsed. Critical resources are no longer available. But the military reports were the most frightening. Without human personnel and equipment, Council forces had shrunk to almost nothing. The encounter with the single human destroyer had shown the galaxy that Council military power was an illusion, built on human technology and expertise. "We have no choice," Veltar said finally. "We must contact the humans," the admission hurt to say. For 2,000 years, the Council had been the supreme authority in the galaxy. No species had ever successfully defied them. Now they were reduced to begging for attention from the same humans they had tried to force into submission. On Earth, in the gleaming offices of the Terran Alliance headquarters, Professor Nam Ho Young received the Council's desperate transmission. He was a thin man with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, but he had become one of the most powerful people in the galaxy. "Please," Veltar's recorded message said, "the Galactic Council formally requests renewed diplomatic contact with humanity. We are prepared to discuss new terms for cooperation." Nam Ho watched the message with several other Alliance leaders. Director General Yeon Ho Song sat at the head of the table, her expression thoughtful. Admiral Dongwu Lim attended by hologram from his flagship. Ambassador So Young Kang, who had become humanity's chief xenopolitical officer, took notes on her tablet. "Thoughts?" Yeon Ho asked when the message ended. "Too little, too late," Admiral Lim said bluntly. "They had their chance to treat us as equals. They chose force instead. But we can't ignore them completely," Ambassador Kang pointed out. "Some of the species still in the Council aren't responsible for what the leadership did." Nam Ho nodded thoughtfully. "We've proven that we don't need the Council's approval to thrive. Our alliance is growing stronger every day. But we're not vindictive people. We can offer them the same choice we've given everyone else." The alliance had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined. 57 species now belonged to what everyone called the Terran Alliance, though humans insisted on calling it simply the Alliance. Each member maintained complete sovereignty over their internal affairs, but they cooperated on trade, defense, and technological development. The Alliance's governing principles were simple: voluntary participation, mutual respect, and shared benefits. No species was forced to change their culture or biology. No one was required to accept conditions they didn't want. Everything was based on negotiation and consent. It was everything the old Council system hadn't been. "Draft a response," Yeon Ho decided. "Make it clear that we don't recognize the Council's authority to speak for member species, but individual governments are welcome to apply for Alliance membership." Ambassador Kang smiled. "Should I mention the requirements?" The Alliance membership requirements had become famous across the galaxy. Applicant species had to renounce all claims to rule over other species. accept that cultural differences were valuable rather than problems to be solved, and agree that military force should only be used for defense. Most importantly, they had to demonstrate their commitment to voluntary cooperation by actual behavior, not just promises. Include everything, Yanho said. Let them understand exactly what they're choosing between. The Alliance's response was delivered by Ambassador So Young Kang herself, standing in a recording studio on Luna Station. Behind her, through massive windows, dozens of ships from different species could be seen docked at the station's arms. The Terran Alliance appreciates the Council's interest in renewed relations, she said politely. However, we no longer recognize the Council's authority to speak for the species within it. Individual governments wishing to establish diplomatic relations may apply through our embassy on Kepler Station. She paused, letting that sink in. Any species seeking Alliance membership must meet our standard requirements: renunciation of forced authority over other species, acceptance of cultural diversity as a strength rather than a problem, commitment to voluntary cooperation, and demonstration of these principles through actual behavior. Her expression softened slightly. We understand this represents a significant change from previous galactic governance. However, the past 6 months have shown that voluntary cooperation produces better results than forced compliance. The choice belongs to each species individually. The recording ended with contact information for species that wanted to begin the application process. Within a week, the few remaining Council species began submitting individual applications. The Vorthons had been first, months ago, followed by the Rixians and Celestials. Now even some Zenthari colonies were breaking away from their homeworld government to join the Alliance. Veltar found himself ruling over a council that existed mainly on paper. His grand chamber echoed with emptiness. His authority extended over fewer species each day. The mighty Galactic Council had become an irrelevant organization that most of the galaxy simply ignored. But the final blow came when his own people began to abandon him. The Zenthari colony of New Hope, a thriving world on the edge of Council space, announced its independence and immediately applied for Alliance membership. They were followed by 3 more Zenthari worlds within days. Why? Veltar demanded in a desperate communication to New Hope's governor. We are your own people. Governor Taimin Yu, a Zenthari who had studied human history and philosophy, looked tired but determined. Because the Alliance offers us something the Council never did: the right to choose our own path. We're tired of being told how to live by distant bureaucrats who care more about control than prosperity. He paused, looking directly at Veltar through the communication link. The humans showed us that strength doesn't come from forcing others to obey. It comes from making yourself valuable enough that others want to work with you. As the communication ended, Veltar realized that humanity had won completely. They hadn't conquered the galaxy through force or intimidation. They had simply built something better and let others choose to join them. The old Council system was dead. In its place, a new kind of galactic civilization was growing. One based on cooperation instead of domination, on voluntary association instead of forced compliance. And at its heart were humans, who had turned their supposed weakness into their greatest strength. They had been called too independent, too aggressive, too unwilling to follow proper procedures. Those same qualities had made them the leaders of a new galactic order. Director General Yan Ho Song stood on the observation deck of Alliance headquarters, looking out at Earth's busy orbital stations. Ships from dozens of species moved in carefully coordinated patterns, carrying goods and people and ideas across the galaxy. Any regrets? Asked Professor Nam Ho Jung, joining her at the window. About walking away from their negotiations? Yonho smiled. The best decision we ever made. Sometimes you have to leave the table to build a better one. Outside the window, a new ship was approaching, a sleek vessel flying the flag of a species that had just gained independence from the old Council system. They were coming to join something they had helped create simply by choosing freedom over control. The galaxy was finally learning what humans had always known. The best deals were the ones where everyone chose to participate.